There's a brand new controversy sizzling at restaurants. How do you know if that steak you ordered is really a quality piece of meat and not some scraps held together with meat glue? Fox 31's Deborah Takahara went undercover to several local restaurants. She's here now to answer your questions about how it's done and why it could pose a health risk. Deb?
And the big question, Ron, why is it done? Some say that restaurants can save money by pasting scraps of meat back together in scraps that would otherwise be thrown away. Now, essentially a $3 filet right here using chunks of stew meat mixed together with this white powder known as meatglue or meat glue. You can order it right over the internet. One of these is a real filet. The other is the one I put together myself. We're going to let you decide after they're done cooking if you can decide which one is which. But looks can be deceiving, and that's not a good thing when you're paying top dollar for a premium cut of meat. When you order a steak at your favorite restaurant, are you sure you know what you're getting?
Have you ever heard of meat glue?
Heard of what?
Meat glue?
Meat glue?
Yeah, meat back together.
Glue meat back together?
Yeah.
We went undercover at several local restaurants to see if they're serving the real thing.
I'm thinking the petite sirloin.
This is the real thing.
We also went to Row 14 Bistro and Wine Bar in Denver, where executive chef Jensen Cummings has never used meat glue.
If you come into our restaurant, you will never see this.
But he agreed to demonstrate how it works just for us.
A bag inside a bag, that's never a good thing. I feel like this is illegal.
But there's nothing illegal about this. Transglutaminase, or meat glue, has been around for decades. Critics say some chefs are now using it as a way for restaurants to save money by pasting together scraps of meat that would otherwise be thrown away.
It really pains me to do this because this is a beautiful piece of meat. It can kind of come apart.
Chef Cummings says it doesn't take much of this white powder. Once the meat heats up, the glue forms a bond and the meat starts to stick together.
You can just see in there, it's sticking really good.
The problem really isn't the glue itself, but how the meat is handled when it's being glued back together. The bacteria that's found on the outside of meat is usually killed when it's cooked. But when pieces of meat are stuck back together, some of that bacteria can end up on the inside. And if you order a rare steak, that bacteria doesn't get killed.
The risk is absolutely there.
Bill Marler specializes in food safety litigation. He's known as one of the top lawyers in the country in this field. We caught up with him recently while he was speaking at a food safety conference in Golden.
My worry is not so much that transglutamase is bad for you itself. My worry is the processing, the way it is done. You could have bacteria on the inside of meat and get sick from E. coli or salmonella.
But he says consumers would never know because meat glue is nearly impossible to detect.
A cook can tell the difference, but frankly, you or I don't think would be able to tell the difference.
That brings us back to the restaurants we visited. We were not able to detect any meat glue, which is not a surprise, although our questions for the staff were a surprise.
You guys ever heard of that?
No.
It's something that like holds meat all together and makes it look like a piece of meat.
Oh my gosh, that's horrifying.
I know. Do you know that they do that here?
Absolutely not.
Do you know if they use it here?
No. My roommate's a cook too, so he would tell me.
I think consumers need to, ask more questions, and I think that's about the best they can do. Industry hides that information. The restaurants hide that information. I think it's completely legitimate to ask, at the restaurant, tell me about your steak.
The American Meat Institute said on a recent conference call they don't believe restaurants are trying to deceive diners, and they say restaurants do have to tell you if they're piecing steaks back together or it would be considered false advertising.
Nobody on this call is going to condone that. It's illegal and it's unethical.
The industry and the companies that sell this stuff are not going to keep the lid on. It just can't happen.
Chef Jensen Cummings admits he's no expert using this stuff.
For the sake of this demonstration, we cut this steak on a long surface area so you can really tell how it breaks apart. But if you were to have chopped up meat, you could really manipulate it a lot differently and form it almost to look like a tenderloin.
Again, looks can be deceiving, but one thing's for sure, at least at Row 14, where they specialize in organic, fresh, and local.
If you come into our restaurant, you will never see this. I'm going to make them take it with them when they leave.
So our experiment is over, our steaks are done, and just in case you're wondering, this steak on the right is the one that I put together myself using meat glue. This is the one I bought from the store. Virtually impossible to tell. Our photographer out here couldn't tell the difference. The FDA says this is generally recognized as safe, this meat glue. And the American meat industry is really trying to prevent this from becoming the next pink slime scare. They say there's a lot of misinformation out there right now. The meat industry told me today they don't know of any restaurants that are using this to trick us into thinking the steaks are something that they are not. Reporting live in Denver, Deborah Takahara, Fox 31 Denver.
Well, that last part is good news. Let me just ask you this. The higher end steakhouse you go to, would you say that improves your chances of not running into a place that would actually use the glue?
I think that they would not be tricking you into, but I do tell you the meat industry told me today that high-end chefs do use this to sort of be creative and to make some designs out of meat, chicken, and steak and fish. So it could be found in other dishes as well, but probably not going to be tricking you into thinking that it's a filet when it's really some stew meat.
Okay, hey, and by the way, Dave says bring the good piece of meat in, throw the other piece out.
You can try both of them. They're perfectly safe.
I'll pass that on. Deb, thanks.
1 week after it started, the Hewlett fire in Larimer County is now 94% contained. The fire is burning about 20 miles northwest of Fort Collins.